Hi everyone, this is Angelica. I hope you guys are doing well and staying safe. Today, Jasmine and I are here to talk to you about motivation and its internal influence on employee behavior. Our goal is to give insight to the approaches and theories of motivation. We are discussing this because human resource development's major focus is an effort to change employee behavior. If you aren't familiar with HRD, we recommend checking out last week's video by Robert, which is listed under Week 2 interactive activity on the whiteboard. He does a great job of explaining HRD and what it all means. So you may be thinking, what role does motivation play here? Why is this so important? Well, in order for us to change employee behavior, we need to know the critical areas that influence behavior. If an employee is motivated, they are more likely to do better on the job. Together, Jasmine and I would collaborate on the different theories of motivation and the different approaches they fall under and the role they play in employee behavior. Okay, guys, so before we jump into things, there is one thing I would like to do. I would like to ask you to think about how you are motivated. As we go through the different theories, we would like to know which theory you feel aligns with how you get motivated. Comment below or on the whiteboard and share your thoughts. Remember, motivation is processed differently for everyone. What may motivate you to work harder may not be the same for someone else. So let's get started. What is motivation? Motivation is a psychological process that causes the energizing direction and persistence of voluntary actions that are goal-directed. Motivation in the workplace is different for each individual because all people have unique needs, desires, attitudes, and goals. So when we think about the workplace, what may motivate you to work more efficiently, be more productive, maybe the fact that you need to make more money. You have the desire to make more money, and so your attitude changes towards your job. You are more motivated to put in the extra work, to make sure that you are proving that your performance is great and recognizable. Your goal is to have a better overall evaluation of you as an employee so that you meet the goal of getting that raise come that next evaluation. So that's what's motivating you, the fact that you need a raise. And so in order to satisfy that, you're doing all the right things to meet that goal. So again, motivation focuses on several processes that affect behavior. Energizing, which is generation or mobilization of effort. Direction, applying effort to one behavior over another. And then persistence, continuing or ceasing to perform a behavior. So there's going to be three approaches to explaining motivation. The first is going to be needs-based approach. Then there's cognitive process and non-cognitive. The first approach that I will be discussing is needs-based. So needs are defined as a state of imbalance, either physiological or psychological, that energizes and directs behavior. Henry Murray proposed that humans experience a large number of needs, such as aggression, affiliation, autonomy, and achievement. Needs drive behavior through the combination of need activation and need satisfaction. A need becomes activated when a person lacks something necessary. The activated need is felt as tension. Only activated needs can be motivational, because only an activated need produces the tension that person is motivated to eliminate. Once the need is satisfied, the tension is gone and the need is no longer felt. So to give another example of what this all means, let's think about this. Let's say that a layoff is announced in the workplace, and you as an employee need to feel the sense of security. You don't want to be one of those employees that is listed on the layoff list. So as I'm sure we can all relate, hearing about a layoff can create some type of tension. You're worried, you have a fear that you're going to be laid off, and this creates a great amount of anxiety because, I mean, nobody wants to lose their job. As you know, we need our jobs to make a living. So what are we going to do to make sure that we're not on that layoff list? We're going to maybe improve our performance, our quality of work, making sure we're going above and beyond, and doing what we can to prove that we are, in fact, a good employee, and an employee that deserves to stay with the company and that shouldn't be on that layoff list. So you do all the right things in performance, and it's recognizable by your management, which leads management to remove you from the layoff list, in which you hear about, and that fear and worry significantly reduces. It evaporates because you no longer, you know that you did what you needed to do to prove why you belong where you belong to, with the organization. So because you're no longer on the layoff list, your need for security is satisfied. So you don't have that fear anymore. The tension goes away, and now you feel more, you feel better overall. So there are three needs-based motivational theories. The first is going to be Maslow's need hierarchy theory, Adolphus existence, relatedness, and growth, which is abbreviated as ERG theory, and then Herzberg's two-factor theory. So Maslow's needs hierarchy has 5 categories: physiological, safety and security, love, status and esteem, and self-actualization. So if you look off to the right, we have a diagram. In the diagram, it's listing them in order from, and you would be looking at it from bottom up. So the bottom tier stage is physiological, which has anything to do with your health, food, water, anything of that nature, which means, and basically what he is stating that is once you have all of those things in that stage, you're able to move on to the next stage, or you're more motivated to move on to the next stage, which would be safety and security. And safety and security involves anything that's like having a roof over your head, having a job, having money, anything that allows you to feel more secure. And once you meet the needs of that stage, you could then move on to the next stage, which would be love. And love has anything to do with belonging to a group of people, having a group of friends, creating relationships with family members and loved ones. And then once you fulfill that need, you're able to move to the next stage, which is status and esteem. Which status and esteem is basically you finding out where you want to be different, and you might think of you might be finally able to focus on what matters to you. Like, do you want to go to school? Do you want to be a writer? Do you reach for your goals in this area? And it's all about confidence in that area as well. Once you meet the goals of that area, then you're motivated to move to the last tier, the last stage, which is self-actualization, which is basically you you're able to relax. You've met all the other areas in the hierarchy, and so you just can relax and enjoy it all. However, Maslow also says that if any of the bottom tiers start to, I guess, mess up in somehow, or something goes wrong, then the hierarchy doesn't work as well, and things start messing up for you in that area. So Adolphus existence, relatedness, and growth ERG theory is reduces Maslow's hierarchy to 3 levels of needs, and proposes that if a person becomes frustrated trying to satisfy currently activated needs, this frustration causes previously satisfied needs to activate and drive behavior. So growth would be self-actualization and esteem, while relatedness might be esteem and love together. And then existence might be safety and psychological. And those are just basically grouping um, those into 3 categories instead of the 5. Um, so basically, in Maslow's theory, he is stating that in order for you to move to the next stage of his hierarchy, you have to first meet the needs of um, the first on his list, which would probably, like for instance, psychological. So you would have to meet the needs of that in order for you to gain the motivation to go to the next stage, which would be safety. However, in Adolfo's theory, he is stating that you don't need to do that, that you could very much have the needs for growth and relatedness, but not existence. And because you don't have the motivation for existence, you'll put more work into the other two, which would be relatedness and growth. So your motivation will go more towards those two than existence. Herzberg's two-factor theory has 2 basic needs: survival and personal growth. Herzberg stated that factors in the workplace that satisfy survival needs, or are hygiene factors, cannot provide job satisfaction, only prevent dissatisfaction. And then motivator factors, which satisfy growth needs, can create feelings of job satisfaction, but their absence would not necessarily lead to dissatisfaction. So when we think of hygiene factors, that is anything that is in regards to company policies, supervision, relationship, salary, or security, while motivators is in regards to achievement, recognition, responsibility, and advancement and growth. So when you think about the difference between the two, you can clearly see that the reason hygiene factors cannot provide job satisfaction but only dissatisfaction is because you can make good money or you can have a great manager, but that doesn't satisfy your job. If you didn't have those things, it would dissatisfy it, but it doesn't make it, it doesn't complete the satisfaction area of it. What would satisfy you is something that motivates you. So that's why when you think of the motivator factors, you think of something that's recognition or achievement, because that's what's going to allow you to feel the satisfaction in that job role. So again, hygiene is something that doesn't necessarily satisfy you, but it could cause dissatisfaction. So if you didn't make enough money, you would probably be dissatisfied. Or if you didn't have a good manager, you'd be dissatisfied. But you could still have something that's motivating you, and that would create the job satisfaction part of it. But there still wouldn't be necessarily a lead to dissatisfaction. The next approach that we'll discuss is cognitive process, which is motivation based on a person's thoughts and beliefs, and is referred to as a process theories because they attempt to explain the sequence of thoughts and decisions that energize, direct, and control behavior. Cognitive process motivational theories has 4 that fall underneath it: expectancy theory, goal-setting theory, social learning theory, and equity theory. These 4 areas are going to be discussed by Jasmine, who will go into great detail on what each theory means and how they provide motivation.
So the next theory is the expectancy theory. This was proposed by Victor Room, and it states that motivation is a conscious choice process. What this means is that people choose to put their effort into an activity that they believe will give them their desired result or desired outcomes. So you don't do things because you necessarily love doing something. You do it because you know, like, well, if I do this, I get this. So, for example, for me to become a manager, I knew that I had to run reports, I had to attend meetings, I had to become part of a culture association at work. I had to be present for any kind of social engagement that was sponsored by work, because I knew that by doing these things, I would get the manager position because I would be seen as someone who's engaged, as someone who works hard. So all of the things put together ended up in the result that I wanted, the result I expected by doing these activities. So our next theory is a goal setting theory. What this means is that we are motivated by the final goal. So we say, this is the goal that I want to achieve, and these are the steps that I have to get there. And so you take those steps to get to your goal. And once you reach the goal, then you have to find, to repurpose yourself, maybe set a new goal or redefine your current goal. All right, so we have the social learning theory. And what this states is that we learn through behavior modeling. We learn, let's say, by the mistakes of others, or maybe it's not necessarily a mistake, but just by modeling certain behaviors, we know, oh, well, when this person did this, this is the outcome they received, so I'm going to do the same thing because that's the outcome I want. Or vice versa. You see that there is a punishment, right? Like, oh no, I don't want to do that because if I do that, then I'm going to also go down that path. So the social learning theory of motivation means that we are motivated by mimicking or learning from the things that we have seen, the behaviors that have been modeled for us, so that we can do better. So we have the equity theory. The equity theory states that motivation is influenced by the desire to be treated fairly and by people's perceptions about whether they have been treated fairly. It's based on 3 assumptions. People develop beliefs about what is fair for them to receive in exchange for the contributions that they make to an organization. So if I do this, then the fair thing that's going to happen is this. Or 2, people determine fairness by comparing their relevant returns and contributions to those of others. So this is the expectation, and this is how we're all going to be treated because we are all going to do it this way. And 3, people who believe they have been treated unfairly will experience tension, and they will be motivated to find ways to reduce it. So yeah, on the other hand is, if you are driven by this, if you're motivated or driven, right, by the necessity of things being fair, then when you notice that things are not fair to your standards or to your own perceptions, then it might decrease your motivation, or it might say, well, maybe we need to do this in order for it to be fair. So it's all about doing what's right, to achieve the goals that you'd like. So our last approach to understanding motivation is non-cognitive. Motivation is explained as an interaction between behavior and external events without appealing to internal thoughts or needs. So unlike cognitive process where you are aware of what you do and how you do it will end up in a certain result, this is a non-cognitive approach where external events will affect the outcome. So the theory that falls under the non-cognitive approach is the reinforcement theory. This theory states that behavior is a function of its consequences. It attempts to explain behavior without referring to unobservable internal forces such as needs or thoughts. This theory is rooted in behaviorism. So there's 4 different ways to control behavior. There's positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, extinction, and punishment. So positive reinforcement, what that is if you see a behavior that you like, you're going to encourage that behavior, right? So we're going to use children for all of these 4 examples. If you see that you go to the store with your child and they behave well, they go through the entire store, they don't throw a tantrum, they don't ask for things. I mean, whatever behavior you're looking for is good behavior. Whenever you are there, you could say, wow, I love how you're acting at the store. Or once you get to the car, you could say, you did such a great job at the store. I love that you, didn't cry, or that you were so happy. Let's just keep it positive, that you were so happy. So that's positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is whenever you have, for example, a behavior that you don't want, but you reinforce it in a positive way. So let's take a child again. You're in the store and they say, Mommy or Daddy or Grandma, whoever, anyway, I want this candy. And you say, no, we can't buy the candy. And then they throw this wild tantrum. Who hasn't been there, right? And then you're like, fine, I'll get you the candy. Just stop crying. What you have reinforced is a negative behavior with a positive outcome. So they are learning. If they say no, I can just throw a tantrum and I will get what I want. And then you have extinction. Now what extinction says is that you don't reinforce any kind of behavior. You just ignore it. So, kid again, you're in the store, they start throwing a wild tantrum because you said no to the candy, and you just ignore it. You don't give them the candy. You just basically let them cry and throw their tantrum till you get to the car. And eventually, extinction causes the behavior to get worse, and then finally it just stops because it wasn't reinforced. And then there is punishment. Punishment is there's a negative behavior and there is a consequence to that. So your kid throws this wild tantrum at the store because you said no about the candy, and you spank him. And so that shuts them up right there, or makes it worse, I'm not sure. Depends on the kid. But those are the 4 theories of reinforcement, where you can reinforce a good behavior, you can reinforce a bad behavior without realizing that's what you've done, or maybe you realize what you've done, but you're like, oh well, that it is what it is. You can ignore it altogether, or you can punish a behavior. So people are motivated by knowing what the outcome's going to be, right? So if I know, like, oh, I'm going to get compliments because I didn't behave badly, I'm being positively reinforced, right? Or if I'm going to throw this tantrum, if they say no, and I'm going to get what I want eventually. Or I might, it just basically, you understand. Reinforcement theory, there are 4 different ways to control behavior. So we were talking about kids, but you can apply this to anything. They use this kind of motivational reinforcement theory with animals all the time. If you ever watched Cesar Millan, he uses this kind of behaviorism to approach animals. They use it at SeaWorld, but yes, you can use it at work too. You can use it in your personal life. So it's another approach to motivation. So to wrap up our talk about motivation, I'm going to quote Steve Jobs here. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking, don't settle. I love this quote. But in general, we all have different factors that motivate us to do better, to work harder, and there's no right or wrong way to be motivated. I mean, we are all a product of our own experience. So I think the point is to stay motivated, to love what you do. So get out there, do your thing.